Welcome back to the show. If you're just joining in, you've missed quite a bit, but you're in for the crux of the matter. Right? Today, we're looking at supply chain management, and like I said, we're going to be focusing on those who do some form of production or the other. So those who are involved in making raw materials and all of that, and then of course pushing to the final consumer, you may want to listen to this segment. Supply chain management is what we're talking about, and I have Alan Klein. He is a supply chain professional and also a social commentator. And of course, he has been on the show a couple of times. If you are, a keen watcher of the show, I'm sure you'd have come in contact with his face one time or the other. But good to have you, Mr. Allen.
Good to have me.
Yes, always a pleasure to have you on the show.
My pleasure to be here always. Yes.
always. Yeah. All right, today I'm so happy because this is your area of complete expertise. I mean, you've done this for years. How many years now?
Yeah, this is about 15.
15 years?
Yeah.
So you're a supply chain expert. So all we need to know concerning this, we are going to know because we are in safe hands.
Yeah.
Okay. So let's get it started. What basically is supply chain management? What does it entail basically?
Supply chain, to put it in a layman's understanding, words, it's that activity that includes getting a product from the beginning to the end. That is all activity that includes turning raw materials into a finished product and then ensuring it gets to the final consumers. So, in another word, or I want to put differently, the management of flow of goods, services, data, related finances.
Not only goods.
No,
could be
services. Goods, services, data, related finances, to convert, to bringing in raw material, converting it in some cases, and then by bringing also mean procuring, and then ensuring it gets into the hand of the final consumers or to its final destination. So by final consumers, I mean you go to a grocery store and you want something, like you're wearing beautiful jewelry, I can say. So the shelf where you went to pick the things, you just got there, you found them on the shelf, to negotiate it and have them. So there are a lot of things, steps, processes that was put in place for that thing to get to that shelf you went there to pick it from. So supply chain involves from the beginning to the end.
So it's like
the end to end from the flow of that good. Sometimes when I say conversion, the raw material, because sometimes certain goods are raw material to certain people, and to other people they are not raw materials. They are finished goods to them. So, for example, some people crush bottles and convert it to something else, while to some persons it is the finished goods. When you have a cream in a bottle or you have a soft drink, so what you have is your own finished good. So it is when this item gets to you, into your hand, and you consume it or you use it, and that is when the supply chain process has just been completed. So it is an end-to-end thing.
Okay. Now today what we're looking specifically at is the supply chain management and how it impacts on profit. So which means we're trying to see how we can manage that chain to eliminate inefficiencies, to reduce risk that could impact on our profit, at the end of the day. So in that regard, let's talk about the process. Let's talk about the components of a supply chain. So what are some of these major components that are, whether you go to services or product or, like you said, data, whatever sector or industry, you must have this as components of the supply chain.
All right, so in the first place, I don't think there's any company that doesn't have a supply chain. In fact, every business has something to do with supply chain.
I just learned that this morning.
Every business. Sometimes some persons say, my company is not a supply chain company. Yes, you might not have a supply chain manager, but you, even if it is a one-man business, you do buying and selling, you do production, manufacturing. These are all supply chains. So every company, everything we do, every day we get involved in supply chain. When you negotiate when you bargain, when you go to buy something, that is you're part of it. So, talking about supply chain, you mentioned improving efficiency.
Yeah.
Supply chain is all about improving efficiency, improving cost, or reducing cost and improving savings. This is what supply chain is, and supply chain is basically processes, because this thing comes with, it's a chain, and in a chain you see from one chain tied to the other one, so it's step by step, and so these are processes. And so what are the basic components of supply chain? Again, you have to realize that supply chain is adapted differently in different companies and by different individuals. So it is not something you can say, what works here,
Must
works
work
there.
there.
It's not a cut and
Okay.
paste thing.
So it could be tailor-made to
It's
different, yeah.
tailor-made to
Yeah.
what you want and
Okay.
what you do.
Okay.
So having said that, what are these components? Under supply chain, you have planning, you have sourcing, you have procurement, you have distribution and logistics, you have even manufacturing, even production, you have negotiation, you have
Marketing, maybe?
no,
Okay,
you have
marketing is not part of the.
no, no,
Okay, everything
no.
that has to do with. Okay, you
Yes,
see, that's where we need to be. Okay, I think that's that on the screen. That's why we need to be very careful now of those components. You know,
marketing is not supply
I'm
chain.
very happy that you are
But
distinguishing
they
that.
work very closely. Every department in a company works very closely with the supply chain, because you
So
cannot.
supply chain deals directly with.
In most companies, a supply chain manager is more like the operations manager. Supply chain operation is a part of supply chain, and if you're an operations manager, you will have a very huge knowledge of supply chain to be able to manage operations. Even administration, you need a lot of supply chain, because it deals with goods and services, including data, inventory management, warehousing, and so there's nothing you can do without supply chain. So, but like I said, people adapt it differently. In some companies, they call it procurement director, procurement manager, and they have all these other components under procurement. But in learning, in going to studies in school, it is supply chain, because under it you have all these components. Procurement, inventory management, warehousing, logistics and distribution, and including last mile delivery. And what are by last mile delivery? What do I mean? Last mile delivery is when you say the buy guys taking, like Glovo, like, uh, DHL, like UPS delivering items to you. That
They
is
are also part of the supply chain.
that is the last lap or last stretch of supply chain management, because at that point the item or the product is getting to the final consumer or to whoever is going to eventually utilize it, and this is what this is the end process of supply chain. It begins with you have a request, and the man does his planning, does his sourcing, finds it, procure, ships it, which is logistics, and then it comes in here. Then he brings it into the warehouse, manage the inventory, and then the processes of either distributing, conversion, which is manufacturing or production, and this is what supply chain is all about.
Okay, now I want us to use a business as a case study. I always like that, to use a particular business. That way it helps clarity, much more. And you talked about bottle, so I probably want us to use water. Maybe a company that manufactures
Actually, you
water.
like water a lot. The last time you mentioned water.
Only water, yeah, because that's one of the basic
Yeah,
businesses,
water is good.
and water is good, yeah. So let's use water manufacturing for instance. So how will it work? How does the supply chain system work with a water manufacturing company, for instance?
Okay, so having an idea, because I worked in a manufacturing company
Yeah.
before, so you have the preform. So we're discussing PET bottles. So you need to have the preforms, you need to have the cap, you need to have the label, which is design. Design as part of supply chain. So you need the label,
Wow.
you need the machines. You need to procure the machines to get a line that will produce water for you. So that machinery line, someone will negotiate it, someone will, okay, there is a need for it, which is strategic planning. So there is a planning. And so when you plan, first it's because you forecasted. There is a forecast. And then you are able to find that there's a demand for this. And you feel that in this market, after your forecast, there's going to be a lot of opportunities in here. So you have done your forecast. And then the next thing is to plan how to get into the business, which is strategic planning, which could be not just today, the future. How do you sustain the business in that economy? Now, you negotiate, and the terms, the Incoterms are agreed on, and
for the raw materials you're about to
for the raw
purchase?
materials, the Incoterms are agreed, and then the item is shipped in, and then that's logistic taking place. Remember, you have done negotiation, you have done sourcing, you have done strategic planning, and the item is shipped on its way based on the Incoterms you guys agree on, and then the item comes here. Then the next thing is to take it to the requesting company. The company that requested, you already, let's assume I'm the company, I'm talking about the company this time. Now the item is supplied to us. The line comes in, sometimes it could be in bits, you can buy a blower separately, a labeler separately, a packer, a depalletizer, and all of that. But when, let's talk about it as a component, as one unit. So you bring in the machine, the line is installed, and then, like I mentioned earlier, so you need to you need to get the design of the label. And in planning the design, you need the supply chain. You need to get the preform. The preform is blown.
The little bottles, yes. I think
that
I've
is
seen
blown
it,
into the big PET that you have today. And the PET is also designed to your brand. And then again, you look at the cap. What cap do you want? You need to procure the cap.
That's the cover, what we call the cover of the bottle,
And then you look about water purification, the processes, and all of that. Water is not just brought from the ground and then something is mixed to purify it. You need to buy those. So supply chain is huge, and it is not something people can just delve into and say, is it not just about buying and selling? I can do it. And then you just get involved. No, it is something you need to learn. You go to school, acquire the knowledge, and it would interest you to know that there are courses in the universities that are supply chain. And there are master courses and other things or programs. And there are, there's professional courses or programs you can do that helps you, equips you. Supply chain is a soft skill also that can help you if you're looking for a career. And it is something that is dynamic. You don't stay one place. You keep learning because things keep changing. When COVID-19 came, people learned to do things differently from the way they were doing it before. So supply chain is not something anyone can just say, oh, supply chain is just about management. There's difference between management and supply chain, even though they relate very well, because it is the management of people and resources and processes. Manage a supply chain is majorly processes. If you miss any of the processes, then you're doomed to fail.
That's a big one. Now I'm looking at business sustainability and continuity, and you talked about processes, and when you say processes, it means that there should be some form of consistency. So how do you manage that, especially in the changing work dynamics? For instance, where there's a huge turnover of staff, employees or something, how do you sustain that quality over time?
Processes are also in themselves dynamic. You cannot have a process continuously with a system. You have a volatile economy or a not stable environment. So you have to find a way to adjust your processes or the steps to ensure they reflect current realities. Otherwise, you'll be left as an old school, and it becomes your steps or process becomes obsolete, so to say. So it has to be fit in and tailored or be specific to the times you find yourselves. Okay, currently we are having currency issues and all of that. You cannot say that pricing or your inventory management. And I need to say that if you don't have a properly managed inventory, you can have the company wrecked completely. So if you have an inventory and you're thinking that it has always been 2 weeks for, your
Like first in, first out? That kind
of
of
course,
method,
that's another
yeah.
aspect. So if you say you want to bring in your goods every 2 weeks, every 3 weeks,
Okay.
you were doing before. What if demand increases? And so at that point in time, you need to change your steps as well. So this is why I was saying that steps are determined by current realities.
So it means you need to understand the market and understand the demand for your market so that
The primary thing the supply chain does is forecast. Hey, and what is forecast? Forecast is looking at your environment,
okay.
looking at what the country looks like, what is happening there. Because if you don't look at what is happening, your competitors, because it is all about outsmarting and getting what you think you should to aid your business. So you have to be up and running with what is happening around your in the global community and in your host community. So you have to look at what if I do this, what will it give me? If I don't do this, what will happen? My competitors are looking at me, looking for a way to fail, trying to get what I should get. So how can I get what I should get without someone else coming from the back door or from anywhere to get what I want? Relationship building and supplier management becomes very useful. And this worked during the COVID-19 relationship and supplier management.
Yeah. So do you think in any of those processes, I'm coming back now to realities, economic realities. You talked about foreign exchange, and for a company who probably have to import, you need to get forex to be able to import some of the raw materials, and all of that. So how well can you adjust or readjust your, will I call it your procurement process? How important also is it in changing economic reality so that you do not compromise quality at the end, in adjusting to the economic realities that are, available to you.
May I also mention that quality control or quality management is part of supply chain. So as a good supply chain manager, you have all this, you're aware of this, and you know your job because your job is cut out for you. So what you do is, like I said earlier, you don't just wake up and say, this is how I want it. No. Current realities will continue to, make you adjust to the realities on ground. We have, unfortunately, in this country, a very not stable economy. So you have to look at the forex. What you bought 10 naira last week will not be the same 10 naira this week. You need dollars to procure what you want. At the moment, we are floating the naira. And so the demand, why is the naira being pressured? The demand is higher. People who are not supposed to ask for dollars are asking for dollars to pay school fees, to go for shopping overseas, a lot of frivolities. And the pressure is on the naira because people are asking for more dollars and we have less dollar. So you need, I can call it any amount and you want to buy because you want
That's
to use
the free
it for
float.
the free floating. So as a supply chain manager, you have to take into cognizance this fact, these realities. And then you have to look at your cost. And so what is the cost? You have to look at the cost at which you got some things, your product, before manufacturing that product, what are the costs involved? And then you're able to say, okay, with this cost, this is my selling price, including your markup and all of that. So you have to look at all the things and then transfer it to these are the costs, you transfer it to the price, to the consumer who takes care of this. But this must be realistic prices though. So it's a changing world, a changing economy, especially for ours. You cannot say what works today must work tomorrow. You have to be dynamic. You have to move as the system, the economy is moving. And this is the only way, as a supply chain manager, you must be abreast of happenings in the business world. You must be abreast of what the economy is saying, especially the forex. Nigeria is also suffering from supply chain issues. And this is why we are having this mess everywhere. Go to The port, you see everywhere is littered with containers. If you have a proper supply chain manager in there, you can have those congestions everywhere. So supply
And that's
chain,
making us lose money.
yes, and we're losing a
Yeah.
lot of money. And like I said earlier, supply chain is all about savings. So as a supply chain manager, one of the things to look at for quality, savings, and efficiency, waste reduction. So you have to continuously look out for ways you can reduce waste or eliminate them, and then find ways to show up a profit, savings, but not at the expense of quality.
Not at the expense of quality, especially sometimes it's difficult to do that given the changing dynamics
But we have to.
and then well, and of course competition too, because
Because
especially for the Indians, there's something I heard that most times they get their funding. It's easy for them to get funding when they come into the business, and when you're in Nigeria and you're trying to get into, for instance, plastic manufacturing, most times the Indians are there, disposables and stuff like that, and they get their funding from outside Nigeria, from the government. They encourage them to get into this field. And then you as a Nigerian, you are struggling to beat inflation. You're struggling, with your little capital that you have to maximize it and you're able to compete with this guy. So it's going to be difficult to try to meet their standard and also the cost one too, also balance it with the same price so that you don't lose out.
the thing is, Nigerians are the problem of Nigeria is the problem of Nigerians, and Nigerians are the problem of Nigeria. Such that when an Indian comes in, our government sees them as expatriate, and so they are given some, concessions. But a Nigerian goes through hell to get some things. This funds, he goes there, and because of the way we behave as well, he could collect the money, use it for other things, and so we have. At the moment, what is our lending rate? Very high. How can you run business with that? At the moment, fuel, petrol is very expensive. So, but for these companies, there are the Indian companies or this expatriate, there are lots of concessions already by the government for these guys. If these concessions can also happen like tax reliefs. This morning I was coming and someone saw me, a policeman. He stopped other people, saw me, but didn't stop me.
Because he thought you're a white guy.
I'm a white man. So
anyway, he's actually half white. His father is not in Nigeria.
So these are the problem. But we must have equal opportunities. Okay. So for me, Nigerians are doing well as well because we are more in the informal sector. Okay, so when you look at the informal sector, Nigerians are doing very well. And you know that the informal sector is about 80% of our economy.
Yes, it is.
And so they are our drivers. And most of them are into supply chain because people that are bringing goods, supply, sell, and all of that, that's supply chain.
All right, because of time, I want your last words on this. To SMEs, what's your last advice, being an expert? That small business that is trying to, how do I cut out this cost? How do I manage the process? How do I identify the important processes and manage them and all of that? Just in 30 seconds.
Okay, so I don't have one at the moment. But I would say that an SME needs to forecast. Look at the business before you delve into it. And look at the parameters, the things you'll be needing. You don't just delve into it because everyone is doing it. And start and make sure you're able to finish. And then don't try to compete. Then another thing is try to delve into something else. When one is not working, check other things you can, and try to do more than one business to pay up your bills so that you can stay afloat.
Don't die there. That's what it means. Thank you so much, Mr. Alberto-Klein.